Welcome to Healing Generations. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on our new releases.
Buenas, this is Francisco Gallardo with the Healing Generations podcast, Yelder edition. As you can see, there's things changing. We're doing a video podcast for the first time, at least my first time. So I want to thank Arturo here for being our first guest here. We're here at Sacred Circles in Whittier, California. I just want to take the time to thank everybody for listening or tuning in, however you're listening to us. Please share, give us feedback, let people know, about our podcast. If you really feel strongly about it, leave us a message, a review, because that does help people find it. And it does go a long way. So with that, before we get started, as you know, I like to do the 4 directions. I think it's important to acknowledge all our ancestors and bring them here with us as we have this very important conversation on healing. So I'm going to put a little cedar here and we're going to start. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to think about if we are facing the east. I want you to think of all the men in your life, all the grandfathers, the fathers, your son, your brothers, uncles, your nephews, even your homies. I want you to think about all the men in your life, all the beauty they bring, even all the cargas they bring, all the baggage. I want you to think about them. And then I want you to turn to your left all the way to the east. And as we're turning, we're also thinking about all our relatives in between. All our relatives, our relatives who don't fit perfectly in the men direction or in the woman direction. We want to acknowledge that spectrum. And as we face the west, we want to think about all our grandmothers, our mothers, your aunties, your daughters, your coworkers, your sisters, just all the women in your life. I want you to think about all the beauty that they bring, the nurturing, the love, and all the struggles they go through too. And then I want you to move to your left again to the north to think about all our ancestors, those that lived before us, that prayed for us, that helped us along. And then we want to think about our elders in our community, all the wisdom that they carry. And sometimes they're lonely. I want you to think about your elders and talk to them, say hi to them, smile at them, let them know that we appreciate them. And then I want you to move to your left again and face the south and think about all our children, those that are here, those that are still coming, that we make a better life for them somehow, some way that we think about them. I want you to think about all the children and all these programs, children that are in the schools, in group homes, and just think about them, that they have what they need and that we think about them, and try to make their lives a little easier if we can. And then we turn around, we acknowledge the sun, Tonantiu, for all the beautiful light that the sun gives us and allows our plants to grow and feels good, makes us feel happy and strong. Then I want you to touch the earth and think about Tonantzin. Think about all the blessings that we have because of our relationship to Tonantzin, and that we're taking care of her the best we can, And then as you turn around, I want you to put your hands out and think about the Creator, all being thankful for all that we have, in life, and our journeys that we're going through, each one of us, and that the Creator be with you, and walk with you, beside you, and that way. And sometimes you have to let the Creator kind of walk in front of you and clear the path. But with that, relatives, I want to thank you again, for taking the time out to kind of remember those directions on our behalf. As we get going, we have, to me, this is a kind of monumental phase in our podcast, trying to do video. A lot of people do it in various different ways, but I would love to I'm happy that we have one of the compadres with us. He's been to Jalon, the East LA Men's Circle, various different ways. I want to invite Arturo to introduce himself. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, your background, and your journey up to this point?
Yeah, well, Cisco, primero, I'm honored to be here with you and share space with you, brother. It means a lot. It's not too often to get to sit with you alone. Right? Mm-hmm. You're always busy and doing so much for the community. So I really just want to say I appreciate the invitation, and I feel blessed to be here, sitting here with you. Again, my name is Arturo Diaz. I am a husband to my beautiful wife, Linda Diaz, and then I'm a father to Sugeli and Arturo Diaz. What else can I tell you? I'm a licensed clinical social worker. Been working on working in the community, working with healing. Healing individuals, families, children. Been doing that for over 20 years now. We're at Santa Ana College right now. I work at their mental health center. I work with addiction counseling as well. And actually, this morning I just got out of working with the men in the prisons here at the Olesi. In Orange County. Started doing that recently as well. So it's a little bit of what I'm doing right now. But like I said, I've been doing this for 20 years. Started with Department of Children and Family Services in Los Angeles, working with, as you mentioned, a lot of the foster kids and kids who have been removed from the home. So when you mentioned that, I went there during that prayer and thought about those kids because, they're kind of out of sight, out of mind. We forget about them. And, thank you for acknowledging them.
I appreciate, the work that you do. When it comes to healing, when it comes to you personally, what does healing mean to you?
Ooh. I mentioned to a lot of people that, I've been on this journey of healing men in trauma the last 10 years, but I've been on my own journey of healing, past 17 years. And I say that because I became a father, 17 years ago. I know my daughter's 16, but when my wife got pregnant, that's when my healing began. That's when I realized that I had a lot of stuff to work on. Up until then, I was coping with some of the inherited ways, whether it was the drinking and a little bit of the desmadre, and that was kind of what got me through a lot of what I call survival, right? But becoming a father really started to challenge those ways as this moment that stands clear to me came about, where my traumas were about to become my daughter's traumas, and I saw the fear in her eyes, and I saw that. I remember that same look that I had for my own father, and I realized the work I had to do, and that's where my journey began, trying to break that cycle of passing that on to other people. But it's interesting because, immediately when it was going to affect somebody else, that's when I was like, I need to fix this. But so long as it was only affecting me, there wasn't a priority. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I ignored, a lot of the hurt and a lot of the pain I was carrying. And that's where I think, our children become our teachers. Yeah. Yeah.
So in your work, you came to this realization, learning about how the mind works, how the mind does acceptance, all these different emotions that come into play. What are the lessons that you learned from your culture, your family, and experiences along the way that helped you in your healing?
I think there was a certain point where I leaned heavily on just what I had learned and what I had read, and kind of marginalized or excluded a lot of the enseñanzas, right? I think in going into school and going into higher learning, you kind of you invest a lot into just reading and writing and doing your papers and everything. But you forget a lot about those things. And I think, once I took a step back and acknowledged the enseñanzas that were always there, and realizing that our ancestors knew, they knew this stuff, that I was limiting myself in my capacity to work. And I don't know if it came from having grown up here in Orange County, where at times, not at times, but acculturation was, a big part of growing up here, and, immediately having my name changed in school. So even that mindset of putting my culture aside, you know what I mean? affected me. And then learning to embrace it again, and then realizing that it was always there. And the enseñanzas from anything from the importance of family, the important role that the fathers have in the family, even some of the remedios that were passed on, we dismiss those sometimes, thinking, oh, the doctors and everyone knows best, when, what I call my grandma Cuca, she knew what was best. And what, the healingness in touch, whether it was putting an egg over us or, our sobadas, and the importance of touch, then, that as part of our culture, it's part of our medicina, and we exclude all those things when it comes to self-care and it comes to, psychological health and all that stuff. We exclude, the importance of our teas and our plantas and all those things as far as mental health and healing. So those are some of the cultural things. I can go on, if I dig a little further, but those are the ones that come to mind, specifically the plants that we use, and I didn't learn none of that in grad school, right?
Yeah, it's like from the traditions of curanderos, they oftentimes they talk about some of that anger being in the gut. It's not here or here; it's here.
Oh.
And sometimes in Western medicine, we don't think of things like that, right? They don't talk about that. But it kind of leads me to this question: what are some of the common misconceptions about healing, and how can we reframe our understanding of healing process to better support our overall well-being?
Ooh, you're gonna have to repeat that one a couple of times, but start with the first part of that. Ooh.
Okay, what are some of the common misconceptions about healing, and how can we reframe our understanding of healing process to better support our overall well-being?
The misconceptions to healing. I want to be careful about this because this is my own interpretation in terms of how I had a misconception, right? This isn't everybody's, but in mine, I was kind of I was brought up very Catholic, and the perception of healing was, to go to church and pray and repent, and it was almost like my perception was give yourself your 30 lashings, for what you did. And this is as a kid, as if I had killed somebody or something, so guilt was very much a part of what I thought healing was. And so even as I gave myself an opportunity to so-called heal, I was also carrying a lot of guilt at the same time. Like I didn't feel like I was letting it go and I was good, It wasn't until, I incorporated a lot of our traditional ways and the gentleness of healing, and that a male could be gentle, and coming into Jolon the first time. And I remember this to this day. Maestro Samuelin was there. I didn't know who he was. I walked in, he was the first one to greet me, and he said, "Welcome home, mijo." Bro, I fell apart. Not in my throat. And I didn't know what that was. I did not know what that gentle healing was, So as far as a male, I think some of the misconception was that, you carry your cross, es tu cruz, aguántate, right? And just work hard and be a hard worker, and you're good, And there was so much more that I was depriving myself by not healing and not being gentle with me. I didn't know how to be gentle with my family. And what I mean by that is, like, even with my wife is a hugger, man. She is, hug. That's her thing, man. And me, I always, I developed this sense of whether it was protection or what, but through trauma, I didn't like touch. I didn't like people around me. So I deprived myself of those things. That was healing, to be able to embrace. Once I had kids, like, hey, how are you not going to hug them? How are you not going to touch them? How do you know? And I was depriving myself of those opportunities, because I didn't know what healing was, and gave myself permission to heal in a gentle way, without all the guilt, without all the 30 lashings, without feeling like I had to go to a specific place to find my connection with the Creator. I could find my creator wherever I was. And interesting enough, another mentor of mine mentioned to me that, the first ceremony begins at home. That's the first ceremony. And when I learned to incorporate that into the healing, in my own healing, I found a better connection. And that's what's worked for me so far as challenging some of the misconceptions that I was raised with. Yeah.
How about in school? There's a lot of, learning about how the mind works, how people work. How did your own cultural understanding change, and had to get realigned, or it changed in school? Like, how did that process work for you?
Yeah, I think, I think I have always questioned things. I was an activist growing up in high school all the way through my early years at Cal State Fullerton and Mecha. So I've always been one to challenge things, I think once I was in grad school and learning more about psychology, and again, a lot of this stuff came from these old white dudes, man, that studied and did their thing. But a lot of it, I struggled to connect some of it to our people culturally.
Yeah.
But they did lay a good foundation, and I used a lot of it. I use a lot of it still as a map. But when I think about family and how important it is to our culture, I think sometimes that doesn't always get highlighted in terms of psychology and learning about those things. Ceremony, that sure as hell wasn't in there. Very even like now, the various instruments, even the drum, and utilizing those things in therapy, those are stuff that I brought in from pláticas and coming in and being connecting with other people and connecting back to our ways, right? But I think as we evolve in more cultures and more, seeing colleges right now and seeing that the majority of people graduating right now are women.
Yeah.
And seeing the influence these generations are going to have in changing how things are done. And we've done things in a way that's been very limited, that this is how behavioral health works. This is how psychology works. And really broadening it out, open more, and bringing in other people's cultures and traditions. Usually it's been like, don't bring, your culture, your spirituality into therapy, but I definitely bring it in.
Well, yeah, we have the 4 concepts of healing. We talk about the 4 domains at least, right? The mental, the physical, the emotional, having all those parts together. Sometimes we don't look at the whole. We look at the 2 things that we know, physical, right, and mental.
Right.
But we rarely talk about the spiritual and the emotional, right? But those are all a part of it.
Brother, even up until recently, even the physical and the emotional, psychological were separate. Like, you go to a doctor's office, they weren't asking you about your psychological health, And when I first started in this field, I was, we screened for some of the biological, but I'll send you to your doctor first. And that's kind of the doctor's business. And I'll kind of work on the emotional health. And it wasn't until I'd probably say the past 10 years that we really started looking at combining those 2 together. But you're right, we haven't even included the spiritual and the emotional.
And even the way I look at spirituality, it's not just the process of you're praying to God or something like that. It's more of what fills your spirit up. Sometimes for people, it's music, it's poetry, it's writing, it's something other outside of you, or even within you, to the point that it inspires you to carry on. Because there's so many people out there that get caught up in thinking they have to go to a building to find something, or they got to go or follow even what our parents did. I mean, I appreciate my mom and all the things she's given me. But part of me finding my spirituality was exploring, kind of figuring out, well, what resonates with me, and how do I build on that? And what was that process for you?
You're absolutely right. I think, as you mentioned, your own journey in terms of your own finding what worked for you, the first thing that comes to mind is feeling worthy of it. And I mentioned, like, going to church for me was like, man, I got walking in like with my head down, like I already messed up, man. Like, that was like walking in like I'm gonna get a regañada right now. That's kind of what my connection was, where now it's different, and feeling worthy of. I find my peace in going for a run. I think it's the rawest definition of me. I feel like I connect with the Creator because my body's connected to everything, to the air, the earth, and the elements. Whether it's raining and it's cold, I'm connected and there's no BSing around it. If I'm freezing, I'm freezing. If my legs are hurting, if my legs are burning. And so I talk a lot. I talk a lot with the Creator. But when I first started running, Cisco, I was mean to myself, man. Every time I'd cramp up or I'd get tired, I'd be like, ándale, that's what you get. That's what you get for this and for that and for that. So I was practicing the same broken ways, even when I was trying to be good to myself, you know? And somewhere along the process, I started to check myself and really trying to be, kind to myself. And I did a lot of inner child work when I was running, believe it or not, because I caught myself being mean to myself and using those words that, bueno pa nada all the time, And I was like, here you are doing something good for yourself at the same time kicking yourself. And so I did a lot of inner child work and calling, identifying that little child and even being like, it's okay, mijo. I got this, buddy. I got this. So if I'm going up a hill and I'm challenging and I don't feel like I got it, instead of getting mad, I would do a lot of like, I got you, mijo. We're going to get up this hill. And it's very representative of life.
Yeah.
Those hills are always going to be there, brother. And we can't be the first ones to jump ship, man, on ourselves. If you can't be loyal and be there for yourself, it's really hard to feel worthy of good things. So when you talk, whether it's going running for me, or whether it's your ceremony, your pláticas, whether it's yoga or meditation, whatever it is, you have to feel worthy of it. And can you do it when nobody else cares, brother? Can you do it when nobody else is watching? Some of us could do things when other people are watching, right?
Yeah.
But can you do it when nobody else cares, brother? And that's how I go about thinking about the self-care and practicing ceremony healing for me.
And in this healing journey, how does it affect your parents?
How does it affect me as a parent?
No, not just you, but your parents.
Ooh. I think there was a time when even my suegros, and my parents, looked at a lot of what I was doing and questioned it a little bit, But I've never felt like I've never imposed it on anybody.
Yeah.
Like I welcome you to my house and this is what we're going to do. And we're going to do it in my way. And even if not in my way, but the way that we practice it, right?
Yeah.
Whether it be, Dia de los Muertos or, the Dia de la Virgen or what have you, I practice it in the way I've learned, which is very different than the traditional cultural practices or Catholic practices. So when people come over, I let them know, even at any point, if you need to step outside, it's okay. I'm not going to feel disrespected, just let me know that you got to step outside and that's okay with me. So I don't force anything on anybody. But interesting enough, along the way, they started to embrace it.
Yeah.
And not because they didn't know these things, but because they knew about it and weren't allowed to practice it. That's something that comes to mind. I don't know if it's for sure, but I know it's not new. Having grown up in Mexico, I'm sure they were exposed to it at some point, some type of it. But not being able to embrace it or learning to reject it was also very embedded in them. So when they see what we're doing and it's good, whatever religion it is, when you get a feel and if it's good for you and it feels good, then it's all right to practice.
Yeah.
Sometimes
absolutely.
we get the feeling like, no, if that's not your religion, that's evil. Stay away. And I say, man, think about how you're limiting the connection with other people just because you don't agree with, or just because you don't know their practices or you weren't introduced to their practices, right? So, I think it's influenced my parents, my mom more so, to find a peace in what we're doing. And I think she's learned that, I think it helps her. I think it put a smile to her face knowing that we do have a spiritual background, regardless if it's the same or not, but that she embedded the importance of having a spiritual background.
That's super important. I think my parents always told me, my dad in particular, he always told me, you're mestizo, you have this side of you and this side of you. One practices this way, one practices that way. And I feel like for me, he always left the door open. You could choose where you want to go. You don't even have to pick if you don't want to, but this is one of those things where if you want to explore it, you can. And I felt like for me, it was very critical. But how do we create a supportive environment for healing both individually or within communities in order to foster this collective sense of well-being? Because a lot of times we could do it individually, but I think our biggest struggle is even a part of this podcast, how do we create a sense of that for the larger community? Because there is so much apathy within our community when it comes to healing.
That's a tough one. Cisco. Because you do want to make this impact, this collective impact, right? How do we influence more people? How do we, allow more opportunities to heal and take away the stigma around mental health or what have you? I think, something that comes to mind, Cisco, is that, as men, I acknowledge, the amount of hurt we have caused, right? Mm-hmm. But along this journey, I've also realized that there's not enough men in the healing field to help with all the damage we've done, So, really connecting with a lot of other people that have been hurt, women, LGBTQ plus community, and bringing them in as we start talking about healing, and also including the importance of healing men, because it's a hard one to build empathy towards, considering how much damage we've done, right? But more recently, I've been involved with a lot of domestic violence programs, helping victims of domestic violence, mainly women, right? Yeah. And it's been great. But I've been able to promote the importance of adding healing men to the solution of preventing domestic violence and child abuse. And I think it's something that we've ignored for a while because it's hard to build empathy towards hurt men who hurt, right? But if you don't work with them, they just move on to hurt somebody else. I mean, it's great. Yes, definitely, we got to help the victim and get them out of that situation by all means. But if we don't work with him, he's just going to move on and hurt somebody else. And the cycle continues. So starting these pláticas, I've been invited to a lot of, not a lot, but I've been invited to present and talk with staff and been part of their trainings, their domestic, the DVAC trainings, their 40-hour DVAC trainings. They've included me into it now, where I'm talking to a lot of people who are working with victims, but I'm hoping to kind of plant the seed that, hey, we need more people to help because there's not enough men in the healing field to help men who have been hurt, which means asking women who've been victims, or asking victims to sometimes work on their healing, so that hopefully at some point they're willing to look at these broken men as maybe their brothers, who were hurt and didn't have a choice in it. Their fathers, their abuelos, who were hurt and didn't have a choice in it. So I mentioned that because it's really hard to get men to go into a healing field, or to get men to start healing, right? Somos bien necios, man. And a lot of the people who do are more willing to are the women or other people, other genders or identities who are willing to do it. But men are stubborn.
Yeah, I think for a lot of men, they feel it's demasculating.
Yeah.
Right? If you're doing healing work, it doesn't seem tough. It doesn't seem hard. But we already know emotional work is hard. Really looking internal, looking at yourself, calling other men out, not in a bad way, a council culture way, but in a way that's supportive, to say, look, you made mistakes, you hurt people, you're worthy of a better life. Now, people are not going to accept that right away. It's going to be tough at first. They're going to look at you like, what are you getting out of this? What are you doing? But at the end of the day, the work will benefit. People will benefit through your work.
Yeah.
They're going to benefit from the conversations, from a new perspective. I think a lot of people look at healing as it's kind of fluffy. It's not real. But to me, that's part of the healing. There's nothing that, to me, feels better than feeling good about situations, looking at it more positively. You feel better when you do that instead of being angry. And I know as a man, sometimes I'm just angry.
Yeah.
And it bothers me that I'm feeling that way. I want my kids to have fun, my wife, everybody to have fun and enjoy life. But sometimes you just don't feel like it. And you have to, that's when the work comes into play. What are you going to do to help have these conversations and reach out to young men as not only a therapist, but as a man? What would you say to the young men out there that are struggling, they're trying to make a change? but they feel alone in that change.
I'll often use this description of, when I'm working with individuals in general, of having a sacred circle. And everything sacred is in that circle. So we start talking about who's in it, right? And so we include our partners, our children, obviously, our pets, our parents, sacred. And we talk about how we make them feel sacred. Like as a father, how do I make my kids feel sacred? How do I make my wife feel sacred? My parents feel sacred, right? Well, we think about who made us feel sacred and whether or not we belong to somebody's sacred circle. And sometimes we didn't, man.
Yeah.
And we learn to find out how to survive outside of a circle. And we become very good at it. You have to find those people, and there's a lot of people outside of a circle, and you find another place to belong, and it feels good. We might look back and say, hey, there's a lot of desmadre, a lot of, unhealthy things we were doing, but I wasn't alone. I found people to drink with. I found people to party with. I found people who were broken and toxic like me. I found people who expressed anger like me, right? At some point, you start to realize that you're taking care of everyone inside that circle, but you're not in a circle. Even as a dad, I found out I wasn't in that circle. I was protecting everybody in there, but I wasn't in that circle. Making the choice to go into the circle, it's a difficult decision because it does mean cutting ties with a lot of stuff that you're just good at. It doesn't mean it's the best. Doesn't mean you enjoy it all the time, but you're good at it because it comes so naturally. We were trained by experts how to do the chaos. But now you want, well, go for it, brother.
No, I was going to say that chaos is a lot of people feel comfortable there.
Right. So going, talking to these young men, I talk about, sometimes leaving that, it's going to feel lonely too, going into that sacred circle, but there's no consequences to it. If it's a little different in the sense of like, man, I could be hanging out. I'll give you an example. There was a Laker game this weekend, right? And I was at home and watching it by myself. There didn't no one to high five or anything like that, So it was a little bit lonely where I know where I could have gone.
Yeah.
And I know what that could have led to. And most likely I would have been coming home at 1:00 in the morning, So making that decision to go into that sacred space, it makes making a lot of changes. But it's one when you feel worthy of it. And so this is a good, healthy place for me. Another thing is, unfortunately, sometimes we're like, man, I hope just somebody's going to come in and rescue me and someone's going to come in and fix this for me. Everything's just going to get fixed on its own. And I was like that too. Like someday someone's going to reach out their hand, It'd be nice, but it doesn't always happen to that. It would happen like that. And when I went to Jolon, I went there by myself. I didn't know anybody. I just found it, saw it, registered for it, and made that leap, man. And the whole drive there, I was nervous,
Wow.
until I got there. And I was like, we're already talking about a 35-year-old man at the time, still nervous and scared about making those changes and what was about to happen. I say also, don't be afraid, find a good mentor, find a good elder, find somebody, I say, oftentimes we invite people even to the East LA men's circle and people still aren't ready, and that's all right. I get it. But, there's mentors, there's people to connect you all around. But if you don't feel worthy of it, you're going to be really good at dismissing it and be like, next time, or I got other plans and all this other stuff. But I think these pláticas, seeing, men connect in this way, in such an authentic way, sober, the way we do in our círculos and stuff like that. I think, these podcasts and what you guys are doing now and being more creative and finding out how best to connect with people, all this is going to make a difference. I think the hardest part of school for me is that because we're working with so much damage that we've done and all these broken ways and all this hurt, sometimes it feels like we're always going uphill, and we're like, when are we going to make this bigger impact? But I think this is part of it. It has to be this way. But hopefully, whether it be, the way we're raising our kids and that generational impact, sometimes that's something that it's a big change already in of its own. But, I think connecting these youngsters that are stuck with video games and everything right now to ceremonia and danza and things like that. I think we need to get them back into it. I think we've lost a lot of that in our communities, and a lot of the identity of our people as well.
Yeah, we need to make our culture fun. I mean,
Absolutely.
it is fun in some ways, but sometimes it feels like, and I think the young people, when they get into it and can have roles within it, all of a sudden become ingrained in it because they're going to be the teachers. But let's go back a little bit to when you first went to the retiro, because that's very interesting to me that you went on your own, because I know a lot of men who can't even go to the movies by themselves. Let's be honest. And to go to a place like a retiro, just so our listeners, they might not be familiar with what a retiro is. It's a retreat, a men's retreat over a 3-day period where we kind of talk about, first we get to know each other. We talk about our cargas and regalos, our baggage and gifts. We might participate in a sweat lodge, pray, connect on that level. Kind of learn about tradition, the fire, those types of things. And then, eating together, kind of enjoying that part of the weekend. And then the next day, just trying to be and give thanks. Just sit there and be happy for what happened and look forward to our work. It's if you would have told me this 25 years ago, I would have said, no way, man, people can't do that. Or men, like all the ones that I knew were more like Christian based ones, which there's nothing wrong with that. I never been to it, but that's what I kind of thought of. Or you go to camping with my uncles went camping, fishing all the time over the weekend, and they would probably drink or do whatever. But to go there, be sober, those 3 days, kind of talk about feelings, which is also tough. I mean, tell me about that, just the decision. What was going on at that time? You said, you know what? I need a little bit more.
It's interesting because I always was looking for, more connection to our indigenous cultures and beliefs, and, even doing a sweat, right? I'd always heard about it. I knew people who had done it, and, but it was more like, I wanted to force it. Like I got to do this. I got to do this. And finally, when I let it go, and it happened so just naturally, I learned a lot from that whole process of just sometimes the Creator works differently, man. You can't force it, So even that trip to Jolon, that first one, it wasn't forced. It was one of those things that just, I came across it. And interesting enough, I had heard about it. I went to a conference with the Compadres Network here in LA years before that. Mm-hmm. And I tried to connect with people, and I didn't get any responses back. I don't know who it was or what. Total, it wasn't meant to be. Mm-hmm. And I let it go. And then 5 years later, an email comes in, and I was like, is this the same one? Is this the same organization? And during that conference, I was exposed to a lot of, the drum and everything again, seeing Chicanos talk. And I was like, hey, man, this feels good, man. But again, I let it go. And now at this point, now I was a father. At the conference, I wasn't a father yet, but I became a father. And really seeing how anger was affecting, anger was my go-to, or just shutting down and not knowing how to process, my feelings, even communication. So I told my wife, I was going to go on this thing. And me and my wife at the time weren't ones to really do things without one another. She was on board, and I think her support gave me the green light to say, hey, she was actually like really pushing, like, hey, you should go to this, without even knowing much about it. All she knew was a men's conference, and she pushed me to go and gave me the green light. So, drove that whole drive. There's a good amount of time to think on the way up there, right? Being in Jolon, to me, I went in as a therapist. I kind of normalized it because I was like, I'm a therapist. Let me go up there and get some tools that might help my clients. Yeah. That's kind of the perspective I took on it. Mm-hmm. But man, was I surprised that I was there for me, and I didn't realize it completely till I was there and opened up and just listened. And saw adult men open up and cry and talk about their mistakes. And that was my first year, right? And I've continued to go since then. And I even took my son this last year for his first retiro. And it was to me, I used it as a rite of passage for him, But it was even more healing, brother, when I saw him go through that. You know, like for me as a dad, it was just so, one, reinforcing, and two, sometimes we neglect to say we're doing a good job, man.
Yeah.
You know, and we deprive ourselves, say, hey, you did this, man. Like you brought your son here. Not only did you have your son, but you know, you brought him to something beautiful, and to see how he was impacted by it. We still talk about it to this day. And our plan is to go again this year. But to see now that the generational healing, we're always talking about generational trauma, which is important. But now looking at generational healing for the first time in my family, I still get choked up, brother, thinking about that moment for him.
Yeah, it's a big step, right? Bringing your son. Just the other day, one of the compadres brought his son over to the East LA Men's Circle, and it was beautiful. I got a chance to bless him off, kind of welcome him in. In Denver, that's what we do. Every time somebody, man or child, anybody comes in, we're after their first circle, we're gonna bless them off and talk to them a little bit. And it was so good to see his son there, kind of just hanging out, kind of absorbing it. All these men telling him, hey, you're my nephew now. And look at me like an uncle. If you need our help, we're here for you. Because the people in my community, they were veteranos, but not the kind of elders that I typically needed. You know, they were the kind of things they were going to show me. Not that all of it was bad, but a lot of it was based on like this false sense of manhood, all these different things that we kind of grow up with culturally, how we survive, those types of things. You know, healing is one of those things where we rarely talk about. And in most cultures, we don't really talk about healing, especially when it comes to men. Yeah. They let the feelings come through the women. And I think as men, like some of the men that really need it the most have a hard time showing up, you know, that first time. And I remember you at many different retiros, but, you know, always having your journal, thinking, I don't have discipline to journal. I'm not a journal type guy, but I still appreciate that you could capture those feelings and reflect back. And when you do look back at your journals, what do you do with that information? I mean, how do you put it to work for you as one of your tools for healing? That's the way I look at it.
Yeah. Even just writing down people's names and acknowledging their hurt, you know, even just to pray for them later on that day or something like that. Someone that I didn't even know. Right. But I think journaling slows it down for me, slows everything down, because I mentioned, you know, having been a victim of trauma. I'm always, brother. And it's hard for me to sit and really like take everything in. And everything seems like a blur sometimes. And those are the moments when I want to slow it down. Like I want to slow it down. And as much as I miss my family when I'm on the retiro, I want it to go slow. I don't want it to fly by, you know. And writing grounds me a little bit. I don't write too much, but when I do go to like sacred things, I brought my notebook today. Those are the moments where it's those acts of feeling worthy, brother. You know, it's not just one thing. It's multiple acts of feeling worthy when no one else cares, right? No one knows what you're writing. No one knows what's in there, but it's mine. And then I get to go back to those moments, especially when, like you said, when I'm tired, when I'm not feeling too good, when I'm being challenged, you know, and I'm able to open that up and lessons that the elders say are in there, you know, because I'm like, oh, I'm gonna remember that. I'm gonna remember that. That sounds really good. But I forget it.
Yeah.
But taking the time to write it makes it meaningful, because of importancia. Because these are books that I hope, you know, as I talk to my kids and as I share what I learn, I want to, you know, use the words that the elders are using and not just my interpretation of it, you know. So that's a little bit of, you know, how journaling helps me and writing those down. I wish I would do it more than I do. But I think it's just another example of feeling worthy enough to do something good for yourself, as far as even journaling, you know. I'm not going to be a publisher, sure. I'm not going to make a book out of it. It's just me, you know.
Yeah.
And I write poetry too, brother. So, you know, I put my stuff in there too. I get, you know, somebody says something that sticks and I'll just kind of start writing a little bit. But it's interesting because I could still stay grounded and listen while someone else is talking while I'm journaling or even writing poetry. A little bit of a skill, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I like to draw because I get inspired while people are talking, and my ADHD sometimes
Right, brother?
prevents me from listening. If I'm not doing something to occupy at least my hands, and I could kind of just listen, and it takes discipline. Though to be in circle takes discipline, to be in ceremony takes discipline, being self-aware, all those types of things. So all the things you've learned since that first retiro, what have you pulled into your everyday life and work?
Again, being gentle to myself, even, when I'm so good at being chaotic. So finding more balance has been one thing that has stood out to me in various aspects of my life, including, drinking water and, going for my runs. And one thing I said that we do try to practice at least once a month is we have our own círculo at home. And we do ceremony, and we acknowledge the directions and everything. But during that, I have found comfort in being able to apologize to my kids and to my wife for anything that day or that week. Maybe I overreacted, or I didn't give my son a chance to explain himself, or I acted out in anger or impulsivity. But being comfortable with apologizing, that's something that men don't really do, or I wasn't exposed to too much. So allowing my kids to see me be vulnerable, to acknowledge and hold myself accountable in a kind way. You know what I mean? And allowing them to feather me down and kind of, acknowledge, my pain or my mistake, and even finding a sense of forgiveness in it. Sometimes it does, and sometimes they got to hold on to their anger about me. That's all right,
Yeah, definitely.
But I'm acknowledging. So that's something that's definitely continued along. But also, embracing the role that men have, and the importance. And Maestro Jerry, said, when one is not at the table, we're all at a balance, right? And recently I talked about that, and I talked about how as men, we found a way to remove ourselves from the table, and in doing so, we thought, I'll get my own table. And this table, I'll eat as much as I want. I'll treat anyone however the hell I want, and I'll never get enough, right? That wasn't the table, though. And it's through my wife, really working on helping me feel, worthy again, and through ceremonia and through, these practices, finding a place at the table and honoring it and saying, we men need to be here. We need to be here. We need to be healing. We need to be in touch with our emotions. We need to learn from our women and how they express themselves, and challenge those roles of aguántate and don't express your feelings. So all of that has come out of having been exposed to ceremonia and being exposed to healthy men doing good work. And it feels good, brother. It feels good when you could look at yourself in the mirror and not feel that guilt and that shame that comes with trauma all the time, oftentimes. But being able to look at yourself and be proud. I have my moments, don't get me wrong, but when I do good things, or I'm at the table in a good way and we do our ceremonia, I always feel good, brother. Always.
So as through this journey, I'm sure you've had many role models in your life, through various ways. But what's one male role model that kind of stuck with you when it comes to this healing journey, kind of reset you when you need it?
Ooh, one, huh? We narrow it down to one, huh? Damn, brother. My brother Ernesto, who refuses to be called an elder, but a mentor. He's older than me and very wise. But he's also a very compassionate man who's gone through a whole lot of battles of his own, But anything from how he talks to my kids to the knowledge he's willing to teach and include me in has been beautiful. I've had he checks in on me a lot, and it's interesting because it's not somebody I thought like, and when I met him, or even the multiple times I met him, that I thought, oh, this is somebody who I didn't feel that connection to say, right? But again, the lessons of this, for me and these teachings of, you don't force things, brother. You let things happen the way they're supposed to happen sometimes. And we developed this friendship, and he's been in my house and met my family and everything. And he comes around and, he's one of those people who could call me out too, call me out on certain things. And I could appreciate that. He's also taken the time to, include me in being a firekeeper for the first time. And I felt honored. And I say that because, as we get older, I don't know. I didn't see, that invitation coming. I don't know. I think sometimes, I have my plans and I visualize what I want to do or, how I want to do things. And that one kind of blindsided me. But it's meant a lot to me. It's meant a lot to me to be included as a grown man. It still feels good. And it's almost like stuff that I wished maybe, a father figure could have done. Little things, brother, just little things like, hey, let me teach you this really quick. Where my dad, man, and I'm not, I hate to be here, airing out, saying, all these negative things, because my dad was also had a lot of great qualities. But one of the things was, his lack of patience. So, he's a mechanic. And man, working on a car with him was, man, it was tough. It was brutal, man. Brutal, man. And I love working on cars now, but there was a time when I didn't want to touch a car, And when I work with other men, like, he's doing some work at my house right now, and the dude's just cool as hell all the time. Even when things aren't working out right or we're stuck in a dilemma, he's always cool, always has his stuff. But he shares his lessons and his mistakes with me, and I appreciate it. And that's one that stands out right now. But man, brother, it's been multiple men, have crossed my path and now crossing my son's path that just stand out, brother. They stand out, man. So, in Cisco, I'll be honest with you, brother. When, you're singing and when you share that medicine, man, and my son still, like today, this morning, he's like, we're going to go? Are you going to be home are you going to be here when I get home? I said, no, I'm going to be with Cisco. And he's like, oh, he's like, tell him I said hi. So my son says hi, brother.
That's beautiful.
But you made an impact, on his life too. So just want to say thank you, brother.
Thank you. I think a lot of men don't realize the impact they have on other men, even if you're just watching them. I love my dad. He had some shortcomings, but even though he passed away early, I feel like he gave me a little bit of what I needed, and I looked for it in other people. And sometimes I chose wrong, sometimes I chose right. But there's one thing I always wanted to be, and I'm still working on this. I'm not quite there yet, but it's this idea of being a nurturer as a man. A lot of times we look for our women to nurture relationships, nurture people, nurture our children. And I've always wanted to be like that. There's always something that holds me back just a little. I don't know what it is, but I know in life I want to be like that. There's one man, his name is Luis Villanegra. He's used to be a Black Beret at San Jose. Consider him like a tío of mine. But when I would be around him, I would see, and he's a man's man too. He's martial arts. He knows all that kind of stuff, but he's very loving at the same time. And I always appreciated that, the way he talked to us as young men, acknowledging, you want to be a warrior? Well, start acting like one. And then we'll take it from there. And I think for a lot of young men, that's what they need. And young women too. Because there's a lot of young women warriors who need positive male role models in their life. I think about my daughter. She had told me one time that she's happy that I was not strict on her. I was strict, but that she demanded more from people, because she realized she deserves more because of that. And it made me really feel good and feel like, well, I did a good job as a dad, the best I could to get her to that point in life. And I feel, that's part of our jobs as men, to do that kind of thing. Yeah. So as you carry on this journey, what do you want to do? Is there things that you're still grappling with, or things that you feel like that you want to add to your son's path, healing is continuous, brother. And I'm constantly,
challenging myself to continue to push and make time to heal. We're moving fast, man, and my kids are growing up fast. So, gosh, there's a lot. I think I could, when we sit around, so many men that are doing such good things, you could look and say, oh man, I wish I could do that, or I wish I could do that, or I wish I could do that, without acknowledging our own medicina.
Exactly.
So I mentioned writing poetry. It's something that I'm passionate about. But I don't make enough time for it. And sharing it and sharing what I write. That's my medicine. I know it's my medicine, but I'll focus on the things I can't do, or wish I could do, without acknowledging that those lessons will come. If it was meant to be, they're gonna come. But the writing and the journal and the poetry is something I wish I could tap into more and access more as I, write about my lessons, or even as a way to express my feelings in that gentle way. In that gentle way. So even poetry is a very gentle way for me. It could be a very strong political way as well, but taking the time to write is gentle to me. That crosses my path. Another one is ultimately I would love to create a safe place for young boys to come heal, and having them I think there's not enough of our raza and our kids. They don't get to do all these summer camps and all this other stuff, right? They don't get that stuff, man. I remember my mom used to send me away to my cousin's house just to not be home over the summer, to be with all the local kids. But I think sharing these ways and opening up opportunities to have camps and enseñanzas and things like that. It'd be beautiful to see, even like a holon just for teenagers or adolescents to be able to find that place or have that place. Those are some of the things that I look into the future and saying that I have the capacity to influence some of that, whether it be through the own work I'm doing or working with other men here, with the East LA Men's Circle or Compadres Network. In any way, if I could influence that. But what I do know is I'm not the same person I was when I was 20. I'm not the same person I was when I was 30. The same thing with spirituality. Spirituality is going to grow. And I'm at a place right now where I'm supposed to be, but I hope in 10 years I could look back and see growth, and see the changes, whatever way it may come. But, I have a very supportive wife, and she's on the journey with me. And that makes a big deal, because I want to look in 10 years and see how we are too, and see the influence all this has had on us as partners. I grew up with a divorced family, and I want my kids to have the blessing of being able to have their grandchildren or my grandchildren, God willing, visit us together, and seeing us together, and have a safe place for them to come. But now I'm going way ahead. I'm already talking about grandchildren already, brother.
No, that's beautiful. I mean, that's when right? Grandchildren. One of the most beautiful things was to see my mom with her grandkids. It was such a blessing just to watch her, and then to have my own grandkids around is beautiful as well. And just the love that the cariño, that is just beautiful beyond belief. So as we're wrapping up this conversation about healing, first I want to thank you,
Brother.
and doing your job. A lot of people, they get confused around anxiety versus fear, just plain old fear. And how I know a lot of people, especially our generation, they're aware, even the generations like my kids today, they struggle with anxiety. And I think that's one of the problems, because we're more aware of it and we could talk about it. I think anxiety has been around forever, obviously, but I think now we're more aware and we talk about it. But, what's some brief things that people can do to deal with anxiety? I think it's such an important thing. I want to leave somebody with a practical thing. You talked about being physical, being gentle with yourself, being open to new things.
Yeah. What I do, what I feel helps, and everyone has their own, their way of practicing, anxiety reducing interventions, right? But when I talk about trauma, I talk about the fact that our sacred rhythm was broken. We lost that connection to our sacred rhythm. And it's really the heartbeat and your lungs and that I say that sacred dance between the two. And when you go through trauma, all that gets messed up, man. Right? And so part of the healing journey is with anxiety is connecting and finding that sacred rhythm again, feeling worthy of it, one, but then recognizing it. We've learned to ignore our bodies for so long. You're right. Anxiety has been there a long time. We just learned to ignore it. And in learning to ignore it, we're dismissing ourselves. And in dismissing ourselves, we're not worthy again. And there we go back to that broken way, right? But really acknowledging, in the morning, how your heart rate is, and throughout the day, slowing it down in that emotional regulator. So with me, I use a drum, to just ground myself, to bring it from here and bring it down. Brother, but all it takes is someone to cut me off for me to go right all back to my broken heart rate and I'm gone again, right? Yes. And really learning to connect with your body again. Running helps me because I can't ignore my body when I'm running. It's going to tell me everything, how it's feeling, everything. So it helped me tap into something I've learned to ignore. So what's going on with my body? Where am I feeling anxiety? How do I bring it down a little bit? Whether it be through yoga's huge, man. And I hate yoga, brother. All right. But it really is learning how to breathe through uncomfortability. It's, I'm going to put you in some horrible position and you got to breathe through it, brother. That's life, right? That's life. Learning how to breathe, but learning how to breathe right. And if we had an example right now, I show you, most of us breathe with just our chest, brother.
Yeah.
And learning how to breathe down here, I was like 30 something. I was like, I know how to breathe. And I realized the whole time I didn't. Because as we were talking earlier, we carry a lot of emotion in our stomachs. And I learned to be tight all the time. Therefore, we're not breathing all the way. And we're expecting to function this way, So anxiety could be healthy. Anxiety could tell you, hey, man, something's not right. But when you're always anxious and then it turns into panic attacks, we really have to start looking at, what we're not doing, how we've ignored our bodies, and what helps us ground ourselves. Sometimes it does involve having to see a doctor and going to get some type of pastilla, That's not my go-to, but I get it, man. I've suffered from anxiety myself and panic attacks. So I had to go. I've gone that way to where I have had to take pastillas, but I still get a refill to this day. I don't take them. They're just there. I need to know that they're there.
Yeah, somehow that makes you feel good.
Right. But everything else is just connecting my sacred rhythm and recognizing it. And that involves a lot of that inner child work and teaching that little kid like, hey, Mio, I got it. And trusting me to be present. Not every now and then, always. And that means even when I'm pissed off, I can't just bounce. So that trust has taken a long time and I'm still working on it. But that helps me bring down that anxiety a little bit. But it had to do with connecting to my body and realizing how much I was ignoring it.
I really appreciate that. When you were saying that, like about that sacred rhythm, you know how like when little kids, you kind of soothe them by kind of patting them, make them feel good. My granddaughter does that to me. Hey. And it makes me feel so good because she just does it naturally. Like she's not trying to force it or nothing. She just wants me to feel good.
Yeah.
And it's beautiful. She's 5 years old.
Brother.
And both of them kind of do their twins, They both have their own ways of healing.
Blessing.
One's more of a jokester, one's more of that. But that's kids, That's kids.
And again, kids being teachers, right?
Yeah.
And only because you mentioned it really quick, you want to learn a sacred breath? Watch a baby sleep. Watch a baby sleep. And you see that little tummy go from this and expands. And you realize we don't breathe like that. We breathe up here. Letting go of your stomach and relaxing those stomach, you should breathe like a baby. And so if you ever want to learn or see a sacred breath, watch a baby sleep. Yeah.
That's a good one. Because there is that idea of we just kind of breathe. It's very shallow. We don't take that time. Things move a lot quicker than they used to. Feels like it, things definitely move a lot quicker. So I want to thank you for being involved in our, this first, to me, this is a milestone in our podcast, to me. And I really appreciate, your candor, your just, being honest with us and with yourself, to go down this healing road. Is if anybody wants to learn anything about what you're doing or anything, how could they find you?
That's the process I'm on right now. I just left my job after 18 years.
Oh, wow.
So, doing this, and really opening up other avenues for myself, I'm in that process right now. But I think, if they feel comfortable reaching out to you or just sending you a text or even a comment, I'd be, perfectly okay with you sharing my information.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So I'll remind everybody, if you interested, again, making comments, learn about the show, I had a question for Arturo here, reach out. We're here to listen. And of course, maybe there's a story out there that we're unaware of that supports this healing journey that a lot of people are on. This is not just a men's show, even though we do a lot of men's work. A lot of our women in this stage, this is the Yelders edition, right? We're not quite elders. We're not quite youngsters anymore. We're in this middle ground. And sometimes we feel stuck, you know what I mean? So we kind of take it from that perspective. So I want to thank you again, appreciate you. And I'll leave you with the last word.
Well, thank you for the space. And this opportunity to be here today, as difficult as it is to be on the spotlight right here. Yeah. But like I said, when I got here, man, I'm honored to share space with you, brother, and this opportunity. And if this could help anybody else, I could leave here today knowing that, I feel fulfilled with being able to help in any capacity, But also, this is also an opportunity for me to also, again, acknowledge that through work and everything, I helped create this as well, this opportunity. Mm-hmm. It didn't just land here, it's through connection and meeting people and talking to people and feeling worthy. That played a role in my being here today. So I feel good too, man. So blessings to everybody that we connected with today. And the healing journey is continuous. And so, continue to give yourself opportunities to be good to be good to yourself. I hope.
Oh, till the next time, palabra.
For more information about Healing Generations and the Healing Generations Institute, visit nationalcompadresnetwork.org and be sure to subscribe to stay up to date with our new releases.